Hello everybody, welcome to Patch Tuesday Updates from ManageEngine. So, December has come. It's the end of the year 2017. We are all on our vacation mode. Microsoft's December Patch Tuesday. It's a real yawner. It's about yawning. There are only a few updates. That's what Computer World had quoted about it. But remember, there are 35 critical vulnerabilities that has to be patched so that you can take a quick chill pill and a happy vacation once you deploy all of these latest security updates from Microsoft December Patch Tuesday. So before you wrap up for your vacation, make sure that you deploy all of these security updates from Microsoft Patch Tuesday. Before I begin with the presentation, let me introduce myself. I'm Vaishnavi and I work as a product specialist at ManageEngine. So if you're able to hear to my voice clearly and if you're able to view this presentation without any technical glitches, please do send in a confirmation via chat. So once I receive your confirmations, I can begin with my presentation. So I'll wait for your confirmation. Thank you guys. I've received a few confirmations and I think we are good to begin with our presentation today, where we will see about Microsoft's Patch Tuesday updates for the month of December. So this is a 45-minute webinar where you can stay ahead of the security updates that you need to patch of the various vulnerabilities that have affected Microsoft applications. So you can stay aware of all of these details. You can patch all of these updates to the computers in your enterprise network, and then you can wrap up for a vacation, for a hard-earned time off that you can take. Let's take a quick look at the agenda for today's session. First, we will see a breakdown on Microsoft's Patch Tuesday updates. We will see on how we can categorize these updates. We will also discuss about critical third-party applications and their corresponding updates. Let's analyze the impacts or the effects of missing these patches, of missing to deploy these patches on the devices in our network. And last but not the least, we will discuss the various proactive measures that we could adapt to defend enterprise devices in our network. How can we secure all the computers in our enterprise network? We might have different branch locations, we might have roaming users. How are we going to proactively secure all of these computers of our organization or enterprise? What solution can we adapt to? So we will discuss about that. And during this webinar, if you have any questions regarding patching or regarding the updates or vulnerabilities released by Microsoft, anything about patching, you could just send in your questions via chat. I have an expert panel right here with me who will answer all of your questions then and there. So let's begin with our webinar. What's in the limelight in December's Patch Tuesday update? What do you have to be aware of? Start your 2018 planning off right by reviewing what products are going to end of life in 2018. So you need to know which of Microsoft products are going to the stage of end of life. Considering Windows 10 products, Windows 10 version 1607 is tentatively scheduled for March and Windows 10 1703 is scheduled for September. Microsoft has also released a list of products for which support is going to be ended, a list of products that are going to end of life, as well as products for which support is transferring from mainstream support to extended support. So as an administrator, as a network administrator, you need to have a view of all these products that are reaching the EOL stage, as well as you have to, it's the time that you start financially planning for the year 2018 as well. And secondly, however, the big spotlight this month is about the two remote code execution vulnerabilities found in Microsoft's malware protection engine. It's never a good thing, you see, when the software that's meant to protect you actually introduces you to risks in the environment. So that's what this remote code execution vulnerability in Microsoft's malware protection engine was about. And in this Patch Tuesday, Microsoft has released security updates for this vulnerability as well. It was automated, so we all are secure now. So this is what the Limelight News has to carry. Let's look at the number of patches that have been released in December by Desktop Central. So 330 patches have been released and supported by Desktop Central for the month of December. So a quick breakdown on the Patch Tuesday updates for December. 6 bulletins, 82 patches, 24 updates, 35 vulnerabilities, and 6 impacts. We know that Microsoft has stopped the release of bulletins, but to make it easy for you to understand, we have included it in this categorization. So it's a number of 35 vulnerabilities, 34 vulnerabilities plus 1 from Adobe Flash Player. So let's take a look at the vulnerabilities and the patches that have been released to defend our computers from these vulnerabilities. So this is just a different dimension for you. We have categorized patches by the impact that they can result in. So we have a defense in depth vulnerability, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, remote code execution, the most popular vulnerability that all of us are aware of, security feature bypass, and spoofing. If you take a look at the report, you can see that remote code execution is topping the list. And I believe I do not have to explain the consequences of what a remote code execution vulnerability can result in our network. It simply gives access to an attacker to the entire system that is exploited. The attacker could execute an arbitrary code, he could execute a malicious software, he could just create multiple accounts with administrative rights, anything. Anything is possible if an attacker gains access to an exploited system. That is the consequence of a remote code execution vulnerability. So there are 24 remote code execution vulnerabilities for the month of December. So make sure before you leave for your vacation, you deploy these security updates so that you can just chill at your vacation. You do not have to worry about the vulnerabilities or the devices. But all of this is possible with an automated effective patching solution, which we will see in the upcoming slides. So I have another dimension for you. Here we have categorized the patches by severity. The 330 patches that we had seen that is supported by Desktop Central, we have categorized them based on the severity level. How many are the critical patches? How many patches whose severity level is important? How many fall under the category of low and moderate severity levels? So 40% of my patches are critical. You need to deploy them no matter what. 28.6% of my patches are important, and 14.3% of my patches are low, and 17.1% of my patches fall under the severity level of moderate. But if you'd ask me, or from ManageEngine, we would recommend you to deploy patches of all severity levels. Do not ignore patches of severity levels low and moderate. Let us let us just stay ahead of all the exploits which might come up in future. It is always better to patch all the updates that are released by Microsoft during the Patch Tuesday. So we had seen so far that there are 330 patches released in the month of December. What are the applications that have been affected for which Microsoft has released security updates? You need to know the applications or the OSs that have been affected for which patches or security updates have to be deployed. So here I have a list of all the applications that have been affected. So we have Microsoft Office, which will include my Excel, Word, SharePoint, and my PowerPoint and all Office applications. Second is my Microsoft Windows, which is going to include all my Windows OSs and their respective versions as well. Third and fourth are the browsers of Microsoft, Microsoft Edge and Microsoft Internet Explorer. And then we have ChakraCore. ChakraCore, if you are not aware of what ChakraCore is, it is a Java scripting engine that was developed by Microsoft for its browser, Microsoft Edge. And then we have Microsoft Exchange Server, which has been affected. It's a business mail server, as we all know. And last but not the least, as usual, along with Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, we have Adobe's Flash Player update in this month as well. So this is just a list of all the top applications that I've listed down, but there are many more applications that have been affected for which updates have been released by Microsoft. Moving over, let's see what is the exploit that has been found in Microsoft Office, which when we ignore patching to, what are the possibilities of exploitation that can occur on computers in our enterprise network. So with Microsoft Office, the security update severity has been treated as important and low. And if you take a look at the impacts, we have a defense in depth vulnerability, an elevation of privilege vulnerability, a remote code execution, and an information disclosure vulnerability. So let's see the components that are at risk when we ignore patching the Microsoft Office updates. So object and files in memory. As you know, the data that is stored in memory as objects and files are in danger. Then we have defense in depth measure, which is a security glitch. And coming to SharePoint server, a vulnerability in SharePoint server is identified in December's Patch Tuesday update. As you know, your SharePoint server, one of its primary function is to validate a web request that is sent to another SharePoint server. Now, what will happen when this component, when the SharePoint server is exploited? The result can just be very disastrous. An arbitrary code can be injected. We are talking about improper web requests that are sanitized. So that is when the SharePoint server can be exploited. And when the SharePoint server is exploited due to improper web requests sent to another server, arbitrary code can be injected, or user credentials can be phished, or even it can result in a spread of a malware. So we need to make sure that we deploy the right security update for Microsoft SharePoint server before we let anything disastrous to happen in our enterprise network. Lastly, the component that is at risk is Microsoft Outlook's DRM protected mails. So, what are these DRM protected mails? Digital Rights Management is what DRM stands for. So, DRM, the Digital Rights Management, controls access to copyright mails. What happens when such DRM protected mails are exploited by the vulnerability? The attacker will have access to any copyright material. He can just arbitrarily access any content, any confidential information. So these are the various components that are at risk that can be exploited if not patched at the regular intervals. So let me move to the possible exploit assessments that can come up when we do not patch the security update for Microsoft Office. So first and foremost is the arbitrary code execution. So in December's Patch Tuesday, there is an arbitrary code execution vulnerability, especially in Microsoft Excel. So you know what this vulnerability would result in. It can let an attacker take complete control of the exploited system. By complete control, you can just imagine the various scenarios that an attacker can take advantage of. He could just access all confidential information on a computer. He can deploy malicious software to computers in your enterprise network. He can create multiple accounts with full user rights. So that this is just, I've just listed three scenarios, but just imagine how many disastrous scenarios can occur if an attacker, if an hacker has his hands on an enterprise system in your network. You can see how the results can turn out to be. Coming down to the second point is about elevation of privilege. We were talking about the SharePoint server vulnerability. So there's a vulnerability in our SharePoint server, and this is about elevation of privilege vulnerability. So if you're not going to patch your SharePoint server update, then an attacker, I tell you, an attacker can read content he's not authorized to access or he's not authorized to read. He can just inject malicious content in the browser of the user's computer. So it is always important for you to patch your SharePoint server update as and when, as soon as possible, so that you can make sure that web requests that are sanitized are valid when they reach to a SharePoint server. This is also going to result in cross-site scripting attacks. And again, the most common exploit assessment that can be viewed across all your vulnerabilities, all your exploits, is failure to handle objects in memory. So we store objects in memory. Data is stored as objects in memory. And when this is not properly handled, you are digging your path. You are paving way for data corruption. And this is going to result in more and more vulnerabilities. So Microsoft Office, it's about your Excel, which has come with a remote code execution vulnerability, and your SharePoint server, which has come up with an elevation of privilege vulnerability. So it's the right time you update your Microsoft Office in order to secure your computers from arbitrary code execution, as well as from preventing attackers on taking your users' privilege on the computer system. Next, let's see about Microsoft Windows. So this is going to include my OSS and the different versions. So the update has been rated as important, and the impacts, if you'd see, we have information disclosure, again, a remote code execution, and a security feature bypass this time. So let's take a look at the components that are at risk. So this December's Patch Tuesday has an important OS vulnerability that should be fixed. If not, it is going to result in a remote code execution on RPC servers on systems that have routing and remote access service enabled. So if you're going to have a system with routing and remote access service enabled, then via the RPC server, you will have remote code execution vulnerability, and this will exploit it. Second is device guard. So for those of you who are not aware about the device guard, it is a part of the Windows Defender. So the device guard, it actually acts as it is a combination of enterprise related software, hardware, security features, and it is available for systems that run on Windows 10 Enterprise Editions. So this device guard of Windows Defender is again at risk. And thirdly, it is a Windows ITS protocol handler. So the Windows ITS protocol handler can also be exploited when it is unnecessarily trying to send traffic to a remote site to determine the zone of a provided URL. So these are the three components that are at risk, and this is the list of CVEs displayed. So let's see what are the possible exploits that could happen if you are not going to deploy security updates to your Microsoft Windows OSs. So the first thing is again a remote code execution. You are going to allow an attacker to gain access to your user system. And secondly, we were talking about the device guard vulnerability in Windows Defender. Now, this is a security feature bypass vulnerability in device guard. So when the device guard incorrectly validates an untrusted file, so the vulnerability in your device guard is that it will incorrectly validate an untrusted file. Do you know what the consequence is? An attacker could make an unsigned file appear as signed. An attacker could make a malicious file appear as non-malicious. An attacker could make an untrusted file appear as a trusted file. So that is how an attacker could forge when it comes to confidential files, when it comes to files carrying very critical confidential information. Just imagine an enterprise network. You are an administrator and an attacker has gained access to your enterprise system. Apparently, in your computer, you've got confidential partnership files, you've got transaction files, financial transaction files. Now, what if these unsigned files are forged as signed files from your computer? You will be in a dangerous situation, and so is your enterprise. Who knows, your enterprise might even end up paying ransom for this attacker who has access to all your important files, who has access to all your confidential information. So that is how critical the device guard's security bypass feature vulnerability is. He can forge unsigned files as signed ones, and malicious files and non-malicious files. And lastly, as I said, it is all about disclosing confidential information to malicious sites as well. So to defend all the computers from such malicious activities, from such attackers or hackers, you need to patch these security updates to your Microsoft Windows OSs. Thirdly, we now have Microsoft browsers. So we have Microsoft Edge and then followed by Microsoft Internet Explorer. Now, if you see, did you notice that the severity of the update is critical? important, moderate, and low as well. And the impact, if you see, it is an information disclosure and again a remote code execution vulnerability. So let's take a look at the components that are at risk. So this time the scripting engine can be exploited with the way it handles objects in the memory. And again, Microsoft Edge's way of handling objects in the memory is also at risk. So it's basically the data that is stored as objects in the memory. And here you can take a look at the list of CVEs that are released for Microsoft Edge. So these are the possible exploits that could cause damage to computers in your enterprise network if you ignore patching your Microsoft Edge and the other browser Internet Explorer as well. So Microsoft Edge this time comes as a memory corruption vulnerability that could enable an attacker to gain complete control over the system. So you could see how this remote code execution vulnerability is prevalent in each and every update. So you need to make sure that you patch these updates in order to defend your network from any such hackers or attackers. So when we talk about arbitrary code execution, when we talk about remote code execution, this attacker, he is capable of gaining the same rights as the user who's currently logged in. Now let's say, for example, the currently logged in user has administrator privileges. Now, can you imagine if the attacker has administrator privileges, if he has administrator access to a computer? Let's say he has your access to your computer. So he has arbitrarily entered your computer. Now you are an administrator for an entire network. Just imagine this attacker spreading malicious software or spreading malicious applications, spreading malware to all the computers in your enterprise network. Boom, all the computers in your enterprise network are gone. You will have to shell a lot of amount of money to get them back to the normal working state. So such is the risk that you will undergo if you ignore patching such exploits, if you ignore patching such vulnerabilities. And an attacker is also capable of hosting a specially crafted website that is designed particularly to exploit the vulnerability through Microsoft Edge. So these are the various exploitations that are possible, that are at risk, that can happen to the computers in your enterprise network. And it is just not about Microsoft Edge. We also have Microsoft Internet Explorer, another commonly used browser by most of the employees in an organization. So again, the update is about critical. It is rated as critical. Again, important, moderate, and low. If you take a look at the impact, it is an information disclosure and remote code execution vulnerability. So these are the components that will be at risk. It is again about the objects that are handled in memory. So these are the list of CVEs. And again, you could see an arbitrary code execution, hosting a specially crafted website, and memory corruption. So from a prioritization standpoint, it is important you focus on the browsers and scripting engine memory corruption vulnerabilities this December. So you need to prioritize patching all the user-facing workstations because there are 19 critical Internet Explorer and Edge updates, and Microsoft has listed them as exploitation most likely. So remember, there are 19 critical Internet Explorer and Edge updates, and they have been rated as exploitation most likely by Microsoft. So it's an opportunity to remain ahead of any future exploits. You just deploy them now and stay ahead of any future exploits in the upcoming days. So next is ChakraCore. So you can see that the severity is rated as critical for this update. And you can see that the component again is the scripting engine of ChakraCore. As I said, ChakraCore is a Java scripting engine that is used in Microsoft Edge browser. So the list of CVEs is a little longer. So what could be the possible exploitation that could be done if this vulnerability is not addressed with the right update? It results in malicious code execution. So a remote code execution, it will again allow an attacker to execute any code. It can be in the context of the current user, or it can be in the context of security. So it again results in arbitrary code execution, again providing the attacker access to all your user system in your enterprise network. Next comes Microsoft Exchange Server. So the severity is rated as important and low. And this time the impact is about defense in depth and spoofing. Okay, so it is about spoofing, and you know what spoofing is about and how dangerous it could be. So this month's Exchange update has impacted OWA. It has impacted Outlook Web Access, and it includes one vulnerability which is actually more complex to exploit. But remember, it could be used in conjunction with other vulnerabilities to pivot a chain attack. So it is not something simple that we can overlook, but it can be used in conjunction with other vulnerabilities as a pivot to just chain a longer attack. So, what could be the impact if this particular vulnerability is not addressed? It is going to result in spoofing. In the context of network security, spoofing is a fraudulent and malicious practice in which an intruder attempts to gain unauthorized access to a user's computer or user's information by pretending to be the user himself. So, the main purpose, if you'd see, what does spoofing mean? Spoofing is hoaxing or tricking or imitating. So, the main purpose is to trick the user to reveal, to release sensitive information, like be his bank details, or be it personal information like password, your social security number, or be it details from a computer system. This is what spoofing is about. And if this vulnerability is not addressed, this is what your computers will result in. Spoofing will be carried over on all the computers in your enterprise network. So there'll be malicious script or content injection attacks, and attackers might even redirect users to malicious sites that could spoof content. Take, for example, you handle the financial transactions of your company. Let's say you log into the net banking website. Let's say you log into the bank's website and enter the login credentials of your company's of your company's financial transaction. You are entering the login credentials. Now, what if this content is spoofed? What if this entire web page is spoofed? There is a real web page which you're not aware of. You are actually entering content on the spoofed web page. So this is how attackers gain access to your banking details. This is how attackers get into your banking transactions. This is how middleman attacks occur as well. So you need to be careful with spoofing vulnerabilities, with vulnerabilities that come with this impact. And attackers might even spend specially crafted mailers or chat with malicious links. So all they want is the user to click on the malicious link, and there they go. They have complete access to all the devices in your enterprise network. Last but not the least is the Adobe Flash Player. So Microsoft Patch Tuesday usually includes Adobe Flash Player fixes. So this month, there's only one solitary bug fix for Adobe Flash Player. As you can see, this update will address the logical business error. That's how Adobe calls it. It's a logical business error where the global setting preference file unintentionally resets it. So this update that has been released will fix this particular error. So we have seen so far all the applications that have been affected and all the vulnerabilities, the exploit assessment that are possible, and the updates that can be deployed to defend our computers from such exploitations. Here we have a list of security office updates. I have a larger list of non-security office updates. The list goes longer. And here, it's just not important that you deploy your Windows updates or your Mac, albeit Linux, but remember there are third-party applications that are more vulnerable than they were. So these are the list of updates that have been released and supported by Desktop Central. So this is to ensure that you are safer even on the side of third-party applications patching. Here we have a list of Mac updates. Okay, so I managed to find time to come up with a collage of all the attacks that have occurred in the previous 2 weeks. So just the previous 2 weeks, but you can see the vulnerabilities that have come up with. So it is just 3 pictures that I have managed to come up with, but there are more to it. Intel's SA00086 vulnerability. Do you have any idea of how many machines use the Intel chip? All of these devices are at risk because of the Intel's SA00086 vulnerability. And How many enterprises use the most popular desktop management software, the TeamViewer? Even the TeamViewer has a vulnerability exploited in the recent days. And you would not believe me, a 17-year-old vulnerability in Microsoft's equation editor was taken advantage of. It was exploited by the Cobalt cyber criminal target group. So you could see that for the past 2 weeks, these are just the vulnerabilities I could come up with, but there are a lot of data breaches. Let's not forget the Uber's data breaches. There were a lot of cyber attacks. There were a lot of vulnerabilities, even in Microsoft's malware protection engine. And this is just about the last 2 weeks. But what about 2017? We have now come to the end of the year. If you take a look back at the year 2017, 2017 was dominated with reports of widespread malware, ransomware, cyber attacks, combined with major data breaches. All these IT security breaches could have been entirely prevented had the companies stayed up to date on patching, had the companies regularly deployed patches to the devices in their network, had the companies adapted to automated patching solution. If this has happened, we could have prevented all such cyber attacks, we could have prevented all such ransomware and malware attacks. So securing against vulnerabilities is complex, understood. Because if you take the case of today's environment, it is a multiple heterogeneous environment. You have Windows systems, you have Mac systems, you have your Linux systems as well, and then you have third-party applications that also need to be patched regularly. So the failure to install patches in a timely manner, this failure to install patches at regular intervals, this is making your hacker's job easier. This is making a hacker's job easier. These hackers out there are just looking for low hanging fruits. And with, if you ask me, 90% of attacks are done using known vulnerabilities that are more than a year old. So this is an unfortunate reality that we have to understand. Many organizations, many enterprises are not able to keep up with their patching. Why is that so? So we know that patch management is one of the simplest solutions that we can adapt to secure computers in our enterprise network. So if we know how important patching is, how essential patching is to secure all the computers from all of these attacks, from all of these vulnerabilities, then why is patching not a priority? That is because we lack of a proper solution. So when we talk about a proper solution, enterprises are just not in need of deploying patches to their enterprises. They do not want a solution that will help them only to patch Microsoft Patch Tuesdays, or that will help them to only deploy patches to the computers in your enterprise network. But what they are lacking is complete automation, a completely automated patch management solution, a solution that will automate the A to Z of patching, right from scanning the patches, right from scanning your systems, finding the patches that are missing, deploying them at the right time, and then collecting reports on the status of deployment. All the phases of patch management should be completely automated. All you have to do is just choose what applications you like to patch, you set it and forget it. That kind of automation is what will help your enterprises to defend all the computers in their network against any such vulnerabilities. So when we talk about complete automation at ManageEngine, we are all hyper focused on one thing. We want to make your patching simple and easy. So if as an administrator, if one component of your job could be made easy with automation, then why would you have to spend your time running around manually deploying updates or putting in a lot of time and workforce to deploy patches, to deploy Microsoft Patch Tuesday updates to all your computers? Why not automate it? Why not leave it to us to take care of it? That is where ManageEngine comes into the role. At ManageEngine, again, I would repeat, we would like to make your patching simple and easy. So you just leave it to us, leave your IT to us, because your network security is our priority. So let me take you to the product to show you how easy patching is, how easy a patching process could be when you make use of ManageEngine's patching solution. So this is the product. I brought you to the product where we have a patch management module. So as you can see, as soon as I clicked on the patch management, there are a lot of details that have been displayed here. As an administrator, I can just stay ahead of all these details. I know what patches are missing, how many patches are missing, how many patches have been installed. Coming down, I know how many new patches have been released. So the count is a little higher because of December's Patch Tuesday. And then I have my system health summary available for me. How many systems are being managed? How many systems are highly vulnerable? How many are vulnerable? And how many systems are healthy? Coming down, I have details about my vulnerability database and about the tasks that I've created and the schedule of the tasks that have been created. So in the left-hand side, you will find deployment options. Coming down, we have provided different views for you to have greater visibility on all the patches in your network, all the systems in your network. And then we have definite set of settings that will help you to make your patching process more easier and more effective. And like I said, if you're not able to measure it, then you're not going to manage it. So you have different reports that will help you to report on the status of patching, whether there are vulnerable systems or vulnerable patches, or you can even schedule customized reports to be sent to your internal auditors or to your security audit team. So this is how you can make use of different patching tasks, perform different patching activities right from a patch management module. So let me show you how easily you can create a patch deployment task, how you can create this patch deployment task once and for all, and all of your patching challenges can be handled with this particular feature. I'd still find it the most useful feature of all the patching features that we provide you. The automate patch deployment can be your one-stop solution for all your patching needs. So I have gone into automate patch deployment. Here you can schedule a task. So be it for your Windows systems or your Mac or your Linux. So let me click on Windows. As you can see, you can name your task, and we have 4 different deployment options available for you. Would you like to just scan your systems and identify the missing patches? Then you can go with the first option. Or would you like to scan your systems, download the missing patches and then have them ready? Then you can go with the second option. Or would you like to just scan your systems, download the missing patches and create drafts for these patch tasks so that in future, when you find the right time, you can just deploy them? You can go with the third. And the last option is that which completely automates the 4 stages. You scan your systems, you find the missing patches, you download them, and then you can deploy them to the target computers in your network. So I've chosen a deployment option. Coming down, select the applications for which you would like to deploy patches to. Is it the Microsoft applications and third-party applications as well? Now, in Microsoft applications, you have security updates, non-security updates, service packs, roll-ups, optional updates. And you can also categorize them based on the severity level. Would you want to patch just the critical and important updates, or would you like to be on the safer side by patching critical, important, moderate, and low updates as well? So you can choose. You have the feasibility to choose what kind of applications you would like to patch. And if you have any applications that need to be excluded, then you can go with the exclude specific application option. So here, if you click, you can browse from a list of applications. You can choose the application that you would like to exclude and have patches not deployed to that application. Coming down, we have delay deployment. Now, when do we delay the deployment of patches? You would be joking. Like, I'm talking about a vulnerability that has to be immediately patched, and are you asking me to delay the deployment of a particular patch? No, definitely not. So the delay deployment option is to test if the patches that have been tested are stable enough before they're released for before they're rolled out for deployment to the entire network. So that is why we have a delay deployment option. You can test your patches, you can see if they're stable enough for say 5 days, and then you can roll them out for deployment to the entire production network. Coming down, we have deployment settings. So this is where you customize how and when you want your deployment to occur. We will discuss this in future. And I have my scheduler settings. You schedule for how frequently you want this particular task to be performed. Is it daily, weekly, or monthly? Let's say I want to deploy only my Microsoft Patch Tuesday update. So I could go with a second Thursday. Let's say I have my patches display, I have my patches released on Tuesday. I can test on Wednesday and then take them for Thursday. So this is how you can schedule your deployment using the scheduler settings. Here you choose all the targets to whom the patches have to be deployed to. If you'd ask me, I would recommend choosing your entire domain to deploy the updates to so that none of the computers miss on these patches. And if the if the configuration fails on a few targets, what if a target was not on the network, it was not awake on the network, or what if there were network issues, reachability issues, then you can make sure that the failed configuration, that the failed patch is again deployed to the failed targets for specified number of times. So this is to make sure that all the systems or even the failed targets have the patch deployed to them again. And then lastly, if you would like to receive reports on the task, on the status of the task, if the task was successful or if it had failed, on which machines, all such details can be sent as a report to you. All you have to do is just specify the mail address over here and you will receive at regular intervals a report on the deployment status of such task. So it's just a one-time job where you furnish all these details: what applications to patch, when to patch, and which target computers to patch. It is enough if you furnish these details, and when you click on create, this will create automate patch deployment task. Again, it's just a one-time job that you have to furnish these details, and the patch deployment will automatically be taken care by ManageEngine's patching solution. So if you'd ask me, an automate patch deployment task will automate all the phases of patch management. So it is just about set it and forget it automation. It just takes 5 minutes of your time. So by the time I complete my presentation, you could have started creating an automate patch deployment task, and you would have, by the end of the presentation, faced all the patching challenges so far. So that is how useful an automate patch deployment task could be of to you. And remember, it is available for your Windows systems, your Mac, as well as your Linux systems. But is it just about automation? If you're going to automate the patch management, if you're going to automate the deployment of patches to all the computers in your enterprise network, is that all? Are all your patching challenges handled? Definitely not. There are still a few real world scenarios which have to be addressed when it comes to enterprise patch management. Test patches prior to bulk deployment to servers. So this is one of the most common scenarios. I'll tell you why. As an administrator, I have faced this particular scenario. Before I deploy patches to my network, to computers in my network, there are a lot of what if scenarios I have to process. A lot of what if scenarios. What if the patch is going to fail? What if the computer is going to crash? What if all the computers crash in my enterprise network? All what if scenarios keep going on in my mind only because I do not know if the patch is stable enough to be rolled out to my production network. So what is the solution in that case? You can simply automate the testing process for these patches. You can test the patches on a test environment before you deploy them to servers or critical systems or even to your entire network of computers. And I'd like to make one thing clear here. We have a dedicated patch testing team here who always test the patches before we roll them out to the desktop central server. But in case if you would like to carry a process of testing and then taking them out for deployment in your enterprise network, you can go ahead and perform it with our test and approval feature. So this is how the approval deployment workflow will work. We have missing patches coming into our server. So all you have to do is create test groups comprising of test computers. I would suggest you to include computers of different operating systems, of different versions of operating system, to make sure that the patch is tested on all the versions of operating system so that it is stable across all versions. So once the patches are tested on these test groups, these tested patches that are successful will be approved. So either you can automatically approve them or you can go manually approve each of these patches. All the patches that have been approved will be taken for deployment according to the APD task that you have selected. So this is how the test and approval feature will work when it comes to testing the patches before you deploy them to the computers in your network. So the next scenario is where a business application is not compatible with latest version of Java. So what do we do in that case? So we have legacy applications for which we do not like to patch. Let's say in my enterprise network, I have an in-house application for which I do not want to deploy the Adobe Flash player update that has come in December Patch Tuesday. I can go ahead and decline the patch to this particular application. Let me show you how you can decline patches to certain applications if you do not like to patch them, if you think there'll be compatibility issues, if you think there'll be network issues. So here we have the decline patch option. So in the left hand side, you will find the decline patch option. All you have to do is just create a group, a custom group, and choose which patches you would like to decline to the group of computers. So this will create a decline rule. All you have to do is create a group and select the application for which you would like to decline patches to. So this is how you can make use of the decline patch application to not deploy patches to applications you think might have compatibility issues, especially in the case of legacy applications. So customize deployment options with granular control. Now, as an administrator, we have seen how we can automate patching, what are the different features that you can make use of to make your patching efficient. But at the end of the day, all the users, all your employees must have patches deployed, and you will have to stick to the policies that are followed in your enterprise. So you can customize the deployment option. You have the power to customize how you want to carry out your patching. To whom should the patches be applied to? When do you want to deploy the patches? And how do you want to deploy the patches? All of these options can be customized with our deployment policies. So here you can specify a name for your policy. You can choose when you would like to initiate deployment to. You can select a preferred week, a preferred day, and then you can specify a deployment window time. Let's say I want to deploy patches only after the work hours. So I can specify from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then what about computers that are not awake on the network? You can choose to wake these computers before deployment by making use of the wake on LAN feature. And then you can also notify users about deployment. Let me show you how. Here we have the deployment policies option. So let me create policy. So here you can furnish all these details. And when you click on notify users about deployment, you can send in a message telling your users that deployment is about to begin. And you can also customize your reboot policy options. You can exclude servers from reboot. You can force reboot on a user's computer, or you can also give them the privilege to postpone a reboot. So from when you want the patches to be deployed, in what time interval do you want them to be deployed, how do you want your users to be notified about the deployment, and what kind of reboot operation would you like to perform? All these options can be customized with our deployment policy. So this deployment policy will give you the power. It empowers you to choose how you would like to patch your systems according to your convenience, according to your enterprise's business regulations. You can create deployment policies and patch all your systems accordingly. So with all of these features in mind, with all of the challenges that administrators face in their day-to-day life when it comes to patching, we have come up with 4 different offerings. So we have 4 different patch management solutions in 4 different flavors. ManageEngine Desktop Central, which comes as a complete endpoint management solution. You can patch, you can deploy software applications, you can deploy configurations, you can manage your mobile devices, you can deploy OS. All these operations can be performed from a single plate using ManageEngine Desktop Central. And we have ManageEngine Desktop Central for managed service providers. Third is the best and the point product for patch management. Patch Manager Plus is an effective solution that is going to help you patch all your OSs, be it Windows, Mac, and Linux, and even 300 plus third-party applications. So Patch Manager Plus is your one-stop solution if you would like to deploy patches no matter what, keep your endpoints 100% secure. And lastly, if you are an SCCM customer, if you're using SCCM, I agree that it helps in deploying Microsoft updates. But what about third-party applications? in today's world, in 2017, there are more number of attacks, more number of vulnerabilities in your third-party applications. So Patch Connect Plus is a plugin for SCCM, which will allow you to deploy third-party applications right from your SCCM console. So no infrastructure required, no additional knowledge, no additional overhead. All you have to do is just use Patch Connect Plus as a plugin in SCCM and start deploying even your third-party applications. So these 4 different offerings are aimed only to make your patching process more simple and easy. Because with the rise in the cyber attacks and ransomware and data breaches, you need to perform patching as a daily background operation with ease, provided it is automated and effective. That is what we at ManageEngine are striving for. So if you have any questions regarding patching, regarding the deployment policies that you would like to implement in your enterprise, or regarding any of these updates, any of the Patch Tuesday updates that we had discussed, you could just send in your questions via chat and my expert panel here would answer them then and there. So we have come to the end of the webinar. I hope this month's Patch Tuesday updates from ManageEngine was informative for you. So I have displayed a scale here from a sad smiley to a happy smiley. So if you'd found our webinar to be informative and if you'd like the information that was shared, at the end of the webinar, once you close it, you will receive a survey. Please do rate us on the survey if you're happy with this. And thank you so much for staying updated. I know this is December and all of us are in our vacation mood. So I wish you a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year. But make sure you deploy these security updates before you head off for your vacation so that you can chill and have a fun-filled vacation. Thank you again. You all have a very good day.